Nkemdalai woke up with a big smile on her face, her heart light with excitement. It was her birthday, and she believed her husband, Fazeo, had planned something special for her. She imagined balloons, laughter, maybe even a surprise party waiting for her. But instead of love, she was met with cold words that cut deep. Fazeo looked at her with no warmth and told her that all her birthday plans were cancelled. He mocked her, saying she did not deserve any celebration. The joy in her chest sank instantly, leaving her stunned and broken. She had already invited her friends, waiting to share her happiness with them. But one by one they sent her messages of confusion, telling her they had been informed the party was off. Shame burned inside her, and she hid her tears, not wanting anyone to see her pain. The mansion, usually filled with energy, became painfully silent. As the evening shadows grew, she sat alone in her room, staring at the walls, feeling unwanted and abandoned in her own home. Just when the silence felt unbearable, the sound of cars outside shook the quiet street. Her elder brother, Obinna, arrived with a convoy of shining vehicles and a wide smile that lit up the dark evening. He walked in with confidence, his eyes full of love and care. He took her hand gently and told her to get dressed because he had something unforgettable in store. Nkemdalai, still wiping her tears, followed him, unsure of what to expect. Soon, she found herself stepping into a breathtaking rooftop event. Lights sparkled across the night sky. Music filled the air, and her friends, who thought the day had been ruined, now cheered with joy. At the center stood a giant birthday cake, taller than she was, glowing with candles and surrounded by flowers. The moment of magic was interrupted when Fazeo stormed in, furious and demanding to know who paid for everything. But instead of answers, he faced cold shoulders as the guests turned away from him, ashamed of his cruelty. Then Obinna raised his voice and proudly announced that he had just acquired a new luxury hotel, and the rooftop party was part of it. He declared the celebration was in honor of his sister, who was now the co-owner of the hotel. Tears filled Nkemdalai's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. She realized she was no longer defined by her husband's harshness. Surrounded by love, celebrated in a way she never dreamed of, she shone brighter than ever, stepping into her new life with strength and victory. Instead, Fazeo cruelly told her that everything she had been hoping for was gone. He looked straight at her and said he had cancelled every single birthday plan she thought was waiting for her. His voice carried no kindness, only sharp words that stung like fire. He mocked her openly, saying she did not deserve any kind of celebration, as if her happiness was something he could take away whenever he wanted. For a moment, Nkemdalai stood frozen, unable to understand why the man she trusted would choose such cruelty on a day meant to bring her joy. The air in the room felt heavy, like all the colors had been drained away. She remembered the excitement that had filled her heart when she woke up that morning, believing she would be surprised, but now all that warmth was crushed under his harsh tone. Her mind kept replaying his words, each one cutting deeper. She wanted to ask why, to understand what she had done to deserve this, but his cold stare silenced her. He seemed almost proud that he had destroyed her special day, leaving her with nothing but pain. Messages started to flood in from her friends, who had been waiting for the evening's party. They were confused, asking why the event was suddenly called off. She realized he had gone as far as informing her guests that the celebration was cancelled. The humiliation was unbearable. People who had been eager to laugh, dance, and sing with her were now left wondering what had happened. She could not bring herself to explain, so she simply hid away, not answering their calls or messages. The mansion around her felt like an empty shell. The silence screamed louder than any music could have. She sat quietly, her hands trembling, tears slipping down her face. It was supposed to be the one day she felt cherished, but instead she was made to feel small and unwanted. Every corner of the house reminded her of how alone she was. Even the walls seemed to echo his cruel words, making them impossible to forget. Though the night had only just begun, it already felt endless. She hugged herself tightly, wishing she could erase the pain. The man who should have been her greatest supporter had turned into the source of her deepest heartbreak. In that lonely moment, she felt her spirit dim, unsure if the day could ever be saved. Guests she invited were suddenly receiving messages that the party was cancelled. People who had been preparing to come with gifts, flowers, and smiles were now calling her in confusion, asking why everything was called off. Each notification on her phone felt like another stab to her heart. Friends who had promised to sing for her and dance beside her were now left disappointed, and she could not bring herself to answer any of them. She sat quietly, holding her phone close but not daring to reply, because she knew if she spoke, her voice would break. Her chest felt heavy as she read the words again and again, words she had not written but were sent in her name. Fizeo had taken it upon himself to ruin her day completely. She wanted to scream, to fight back, to tell everyone the truth, but instead she swallowed her pain and stayed silent. Tears pushed against her eyes, and though she tried to blink them away, they fell anyway, tracing slow paths down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them off, afraid even the walls might judge her for crying. In her heart, she had dreamed of this day being filled with laughter and love. She had imagined music, friends raising their glasses, and a moment where she could stand tall and feel special. Instead, she was hiding in her own home, her joy stolen before it even began. She could hear faint laughter outside from neighbors who knew nothing of her pain, and it only deepened her sense of loneliness. The silence of the house felt unbearable, like the walls themselves were closing in, whispering her shame back to her. Every time her phone buzzed again, she jumped, hoping maybe one person had refused to believe the cancellation. But no, every new message only confirmed that her guests were turning back. Some sent short notes of disappointment, others sent kind words of concern, but all of them reminded her that the celebration she had been waiting for no longer existed. She pressed her face into her pillow, hiding her tears even from herself. The woman who once woke up that morning filled with excitement was now crushed under the weight of heartbreak. She felt powerless, as though her happiness had been stolen forever. Alone in the silence, she wondered if the night would ever bring her a reason to smile again. Evening falls, and the house that once promised laughter and music now sits in complete silence. The mansion feels too large, every room echoing with emptiness. Nkemdalai sits alone in her bedroom, staring at the dim light above her, the weight of loneliness pressing down on her shoulders. The day she dreamed would be filled with joy has turned into the longest, saddest evening of her life. She can hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall, each second dragging slowly, reminding her that time is moving forward but her happiness is not. She looks around the space, the fine curtains, the soft bed, the polished furniture, all of it feeling meaningless when her heart is so heavy. In that quiet room, she feels like a stranger in her own home. She hugs her knees close to her chest, as if trying to protect herself from the coldness that now fills not just the house but her very soul. She wonders how a place built with wealth and comfort can feel so empty, how walls meant to protect her can suddenly feel like a prison. Her phone lies on the table, silent now after hours of buzzing with cancelled calls and messages. She does not touch it. She cannot bear to see the reminders of what should have been. Instead, she sits still, her eyes fixed on nothing, her mind drifting back to the moment Fizeo told her she did not deserve to be celebrated. His cruel words play again and again in her head, louder than the silence around her. They cut deeper each time she remembers them, leaving her with wounds no one can see. The night grows darker, and shadows stretch across the walls. The mansion is quiet, but her heart is louder than ever, beating with pain, longing and sorrow. She feels unwanted, like her presence in the world does not matter, as though she is invisible even in her own home. The silence weighs so heavily that she begins to feel suffocated. Every breath feels like a battle against the emptiness closing in on her. She wipes her face, but fresh tears keep coming. She whispers to herself, asking why her life has turned this way, why her birthday has become a night of sorrow instead of joy. Alone in the stillness, she feels the sharp ache of being unloved. Yet deep inside her brokenness, a tiny spark remains, waiting for something to change, though she cannot yet see what is coming. Suddenly, the silence of the night was broken by the sound of car horns and bright headlights filling the street. Nkemdalai lifted her head, confused, as she heard doors opening and voices outside. She wiped her tears quickly, unsure if she was dreaming. Through the window, she saw a convoy of shining cars lined up, their lights glowing like stars in the darkness. At the front stood her elder brother, Obinna, tall, proud, and smiling in a way that lit up everything around him. His presence carried warmth, the kind she had been craving all day, and for the first time, her heart felt a spark of hope. Obinna walked towards the mansion with confidence, his steps full of purpose, his eyes filled with love for his sister. Neighbors peered from their windows, whispering in surprise at the grand entrance, but Obinna paid no attention to them. He was there for one reason alone: to bring back the joy his sister had been denied. As he entered, his smile grew even wider when he saw her standing weak and broken by the window. He opened his arms, and she rushed to him, burying her face against his chest, finally letting go of all the pain she had been holding inside. He held her gently, patting her back, whispering that everything would be all right. Then he stepped back, looked into her tired eyes, and told her to dress up because he had something unforgettable planned for her. His words carried strength, and she could feel his determination to turn her night into the birthday she truly deserved. She blinked in shock, unsure what he meant, but his steady gaze gave her comfort. Outside, his friends and staff were unloading things from the cars: boxes of decorations, lights, flowers, and gifts. The quiet street that once felt dead now buzzed with life, filled with laughter and music as preparations began. The once dark night was slowly transforming into something magical, something she could not have imagined even in her dreams. Nkemdalai's heart raced, not with sadness this time, but with a new sense of excitement. Her brother's arrival felt like the sunrise after the longest storm. The woman who had sat alone in sorrow moments ago was now standing in the glow of hope, ready to see where his surprise would lead her. For the first time that day, she allowed herself to believe her night was not over yet. He took her hand gently, his eyes shining with love, and told her to dress up because he had something unforgettable planned. His voice was calm yet full of excitement, and for the first time that day, Nkemdalai felt her heart beat with a different rhythm. She looked at him in disbelief, still unsure if she could trust happiness after so much pain. But his steady grip gave her courage. She walked to her room, opened her wardrobe, and carefully picked out a dress that had been waiting for a special moment. As she stood in front of the mirror, she wiped away the last traces of her tears and told herself she deserved this chance to feel alive again. When she stepped out, Obinna's smile widened, and he told her she looked beautiful. He guided her out of the house and into one of the cars from the convoy. The door opened with care as though she was royalty. The ride through the night felt magical. She could see city lights flashing past, her reflection glowing softly in the car window. Every turn made her more curious, wondering what surprise her brother had prepared. Yet she kept silent, letting anticipation grow stronger inside her. Finally, the car stopped, and Obinna stepped out first, reaching for her hand once again. He led her towards a tall building glowing against the night sky. They entered, and she felt the rush of cool air and the hum of energy inside. He pressed the button for the rooftop, and her heart raced faster with every floor they climbed. The elevator doors opened, and what she saw left her breathless. The rooftop had been transformed into a wonderland. Bright lights sparkled overhead, music floated through the air, and her closest friends, who thought the night was ruined, were now waiting there with wide smiles and open arms. Flowers lined the edges, lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, and at the center stood a cake taller than her, glowing with candles that lit the night. Musicians strummed sweet melodies, filling the place with life and joy. Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of happiness. She turned to her brother, unable to speak, but her heart screamed with gratitude. In that moment, she knew he had given her more than a birthday celebration. He had given her back her smile, her worth, and her light. The birthday transformation. Nkemdalai is escorted to a private rooftop event, filled with her friends, musicians, and a birthday cake taller than her. Nkemdalai stepped out of the elevator with her brother's hand holding hers, and the moment her feet touched the rooftop floor, her eyes widened in disbelief. The once ordinary space had been turned into a paradise. Twinkling lights hung across the sky like stars brought down to earth, flowers decorated every corner, and music floated gently through the air, making the whole place feel alive. Her friends, the very same ones who had thought the party was cancelled, now stood waiting, cheering as she arrived. Their faces glowed with joy, and the sight of them instantly melted the loneliness she had carried all day. The musicians began to play, their voices rising into the night, filling it with rhythm and life. The sound of drums and soft melodies wrapped around her like a warm blanket, pulling her deeper into the magic of the moment. In the center of it all stood a cake so tall it nearly reached her shoulders, decorated with bright colors, candles, and flowers that shimmered under the lights. It was the kind of cake she had only ever seen in magazines, and now it was hers, standing proud as a symbol of love and celebration. Her friends rushed to her side, hugging her tightly, telling her how beautiful she looked, how happy they were to see her. She felt laughter bubbling up inside her, laughter that had been missing for so long. The sadness of the day began to fade away, replaced with warmth, cheer, and the glow of belonging. Every detail was perfect. The music, the lights, the food laid out on shining tables, the smiles of those around her. And she realized this was more than a party. It was a statement that she mattered, that she was loved. As she stood at the center of it all, tears filled her eyes again. But these were tears she did not want to hide. She felt transformed, no longer the broken woman left alone in silence, but a queen celebrated under the stars. Her heart swelled with gratitude for her brother, for her friends, for the universe giving her this chance to shine. For the first time in a long while, she felt whole, radiant, and truly alive. The husband's shock. Fazeo arrives in anger, demanding to know who paid for everything. The guests turned their backs on him. Fazeo stormed onto the rooftop, his face dark with rage, his footsteps heavy enough to silence the music for a moment. His eyes darted around, taking in the lights, the flowers, the crowd of smiling faces, and the massive cake towering proudly in the center. He could not believe what he was seeing. The very celebration he had worked so hard to destroy was now brighter and grander than anything he could have imagined. His voice cut through the night as he shouted, demanding to know who had paid for everything, who had dared to defy him. The guests, who had once been polite to him out of respect for his marriage to Nkemdalai, now turned away, refusing to meet his eyes. Whispers moved through the crowd, their faces filled with disappointment and disgust at his cruelty. They remembered how he had mocked his wife, how he had tried to crush her spirit, and none of them wanted to stand by him now. One by one, they shifted closer to Nkemdalai, forming a wall of support around her, leaving him standing alone in his fury. He pointed at the decorations, the musicians, the glowing lights, and the tables filled with food, shouting that she had no right to have any of it. But no one answered him. The music started up again, louder this time, drowning out his voice, as though even the night itself was rejecting his bitterness. He clenched his fists, his pride wounded as he realized he no longer held control over her. Nkemdalai stood tall in the middle of the gathering, her eyes steady, her tears gone. For the first time, she looked at him without fear. She did not need to speak, because the silence of the crowd was louder than his anger. Her friends laughed and clapped, ignoring his presence, choosing instead to dance and celebrate her. The more they rejoiced, the smaller he seemed. Fazeo tried again, shouting her name, demanding answers, but his voice carried no power anymore. The rooftop, glowing with love and joy, belonged to her, not him. And as he stood there, unwanted and out of place, he realized he had lost more than just control of the night. He had lost the respect of everyone around him. The public announcement. Obinna reveals he just acquired a new luxury hotel and the rooftop party is in his sister's honor. She is now co-owner. The music softened, and all eyes turned as Obinna stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. He raised his hand for silence, and the chatter of the crowd faded into eager curiosity. Standing tall beside his sister, he looked around the rooftop, his face glowing with pride. Then he cleared his throat and spoke, his voice firm but filled with joy. He announced that he had just acquired a brand new luxury hotel, one of the finest in the city, and the very rooftop they were standing on was part of it. Gasps of surprise spread quickly among the guests, their eyes wide with admiration. He smiled and turned to Nkemdalai, telling everyone that this unforgettable celebration was not only a birthday gift, but also a new beginning for her. He revealed that she was now co-owner of the hotel, her name written beside his, her share secure and undeniable. The crowd erupted in cheers, clapping and shouting her name, celebrating her as though she were royalty. Nkemdalai's hands trembled as she covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes, but this time they were tears of shock and happiness. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The brother who had walked in with a convoy of cars had not only saved her night, but had also given her a future brighter than she ever dreamed of. She felt her chest swell with pride, her pain replaced with strength, her humiliation transformed into triumph. Guests rushed to hug her, some congratulating her with laughter, others raising their glasses in her honor. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment, while musicians struck up a louder tune, filling the rooftop with renewed energy. Fazeo stood frozen at the edge, his face pale as he realized he no longer had any power over her. The very people who once smiled politely at him now ignored him completely, their focus entirely on the woman he had tried to break. Obinna placed his arm around his sister and told her she deserved every bit of it. The rooftop sparkled brighter than ever as fireworks burst in the sky, lighting up the night in her honor. In that instant, Nkemdalai was no longer just a wife tied to cruelty. She was a celebrated woman, a co-owner, and a symbol of victory. The sweet victory. Nkemdalai realizes she is no longer defined by her husband's cruelty. She shines in her new role, celebrated by everyone. Nkemdalai stood in the center of the rooftop, her heart glowing brighter than the lights above her. For so long, she had carried the weight of her husband's harsh words, believing his cruelty was her truth. But as her friends cheered, as her brother held her proudly, as the crowd lifted her name higher and higher, she finally understood something powerful. She was not bound by his bitterness. She was not small. She was not weak. And she was not invisible. She was a woman of strength, beauty, and worth. And tonight the world could see it too. The music played louder, and she allowed herself to laugh, a sound filled with freedom and joy. Every embrace from her friends reminded her that she was loved deeply, not for what her husband thought of her, but for who she truly was. The towering cake, the glowing decorations, the grand hotel now bearing her name, all of it spoke louder than his insults ever could. She was no longer the woman sitting alone in silence, crying over canceled plans. She was the woman standing tall, celebrated under the stars, owning her power and her future. Fazeo's shadow in the corner no longer mattered. His anger, his jealousy, his pride, they were nothing compared to the light surrounding her now. He had tried to break her, but instead, she was lifted higher than she had ever been before. Her story was no longer one of heartbreak, but of transformation. She had stepped into a new chapter, one where her identity was not tied to someone else's cruelty, but built on her own strength and her brother's unwavering love. The night ended with fireworks bursting across the sky, each spark reflecting in her eyes like a promise of brighter days ahead. The crowd clapped and sang, calling her name, making her feel like the queen of the evening. She raised her glass, smiling wider than she ever had, and whispered a prayer of gratitude for the gift of a new beginning. Hi, besties, sparkling heart sparkles, thank you so much for watching till the very end. Your love means the world. Don't forget to like, thumbs up, drop a sweet comment, speech balloon, and hit that subscribe button bell so you never miss another story. See you next time. Bye. Waving hand, 2 hearts.